The next story was inspired by this infamous mugshot that has surfaced the internet for quite some time. There are many memes on the internet regarding this mugshot for obvious reasons. But one meme that stands out the most was a correlating image of the criminal and the Simpsons character Cletus. Here's a dramatized version of what led him to receive this mugshot. This all started at a house party I was at with some friends of mine. It was Miami summertime, and everybody was getting lit at long last. The drinks were flowing freely, the music was loud, and the girls were stunning. We were all hanging out in someone's backyard around a nice fire pit where there were some obligatory marshmallows available for roasting. Despite all the drinks that were going around, the mood changed, and everybody was looking to get even more under the influence that night. There was some half-serious, half-inebriated talk about where to get the next party round of party favors, as you couldn't exactly go and grab it from the store. And it didn't seem like anybody had reliable connections. I personally didn't want to have any part in it, as I was living at my parents' house and couldn't get away with smelling like a skunk when I got home. I hadn't come out to the party just to get messed up anyway. I knew that a certain person was going to be there, a girl I knew from a class who I used to flirt with every now and then. I was really hoping I could get lucky with her that night, so when the party vibes died down a bit, I walked over and started talking to her. Hey, long time no see.
Oh yeah? Did you miss me?
Hell yeah. Want to smash? I'm very smashed. Had a lot to drink. What do you say we get out of here and go over to your place?
Not so fast, lover boy. The night is still young. But you know, if you were to help liven things up around here, you might just earn your invitation.
Well then, how can I help?
The owner of this house says there's a man who hangs around at the store on the corner. We know he's got the good stuff, but we don't feel like dealing with him right now. You feel me? But if you were to go get it from him, you'd be the life of the party.
How will I know it's him and not some other gas station freak?
Trust me, you'll know it's him when you see him. He's Cletus.
Cletus? Like from The Simpsons?
Yeah, he looks and acts just like him. Just look for the teeth. Now go and get the people what they need.
I sped off towards the store before I could be accused of being a square. I was a little torn, as I never wanted to partake in that particular consumption to begin with, but of course, getting with my crush was more important than staying out of trouble. It was about a 5-minute walk to the store. As soon as I rounded the corner, I saw a shady-looking man loitering by the storefront. From the dirt on his face and the snaggle teeth sticking out of his mouth, I knew he had to be the one they called Cletus. However, that made me no less nervous to go up and talk to him. I've never done a deal like that before, and I was completely unprepared for it mentally. Despite that, I knew that I'd have to make the sacrifice to get what I wanted. Hey man, are you Cletus? Just by the way he reacted, I could tell things were already getting off on the wrong foot. He stood up straight and stepped towards me, posturing. The closer he got to me, the harder it was to take my eyes off his impossibly mangled teeth.
Yeah, and who the hell are you? How do you know who I am?
Some of my friends told me you were, what you provide, I'm the one they sent to buy for the party. Any chance I could get 2 for fifths?
You're an undie, ain't you? You think you can fool me with that BS lingo? Get out of my face before I mess you up, little piglet!
Hold on, man. I'm not a cop, I swear. I've just never done this before. I'm a little out of my element, you know. I was just hoping you could help me out. If I make this purchase, I might get laid.
Alright, I believe you. You ain't no cop, but you's definitely an idiot. Turn out your pockets, mama's boy.
Wait, what?
I said give me all you got! Come on, don't make me wait!
My heart was pounding. I thought about running, but I was frozen stiff by the sight of that nasty knife. Even if it was just a pocket knife, I've never been threatened with one in my entire life. I reluctantly obeyed his commands and handed over my cell phone and wallet.
Yeah, that's a smart decision. Don't go nowhere just yet. Let me see what you got.
He pocketed my phone right away and then rummaged through my wallet. Something about what he found or didn't find made him upset. I didn't have any credit cards and I didn't have much cash.
You telling me all you got is $10? What did you think you was gonna buy with $10? That ain't ever gonna be enough for a whole party. Wait, something ain't right here. You've been lying to me.
No, I swear I didn't know how much $10 would buy. That's all I had.
Damn it. People like you make me sick!
That's about when things hit worst case scenario. I breathed a sigh of relief as I watched him put the money into his pocket, thinking it was all over, but it wasn't. Right as I dropped my guard, he lunged at me and stabbed me in the stomach. It was a small blade, but it hurt like fire and lightning all at once, and he didn't stop at just one thrust of the knife. He held me in place by the throat and bared his rotten, mangled teeth, growling like a rabid animal while he repeatedly plunged the blade into my abdomen in a fit of sudden, boiling rage, tearing hole after hole in my skin in a matter of seconds. Finally, I mustered the strength of fight or flight and punched him straight in the mouth. One of his front teeth flew straight out of his jaw and hit the concrete. He reeled in pain, blood spurting from his jaw. I took the moment to run away, fighting through the terrible pain and holding my stomach tightly to stop the bleeding. I feared that Cletus would follow, but he didn't for some reason. However, he did have one more thing to say.
The least you could have done was pay for my dentist!
I can't imagine what mixture of insanity and stupidity one must possess to act the way he did, but it's not for regular people to understand. The run back to the party felt a million times longer than the initial walk had felt, but I eventually made it back and got help from the people who were there. The police had no trouble recognizing his description and bringing him in. They dubbed him Dracula, given his violent tendencies, but I still think the name Cletus is far more fitting for his looks and personality. Jokes aside, I bear the scars of that incident to this day. The gashes in my stomach are constant reminders of what I went through. But if you're wondering if the whole thing scored me pity points with my crush, just so you know, it definitely did.
What?
I just got finished brushing my teeth.
Alright.
If you want something for the refrigerator, you can grab anything you want.
Alright. Hey, how are you? Hey, how you doing? Good. Why don't you have a seat back in the stool for me? And keep your hands out of your pockets, please. Alright, no problem.
The next story was inspired by a creep who was caught on an undercover sting television show. This is no different from the other creeps who get caught in the operation, but what makes him stand out was his bizarre resemblance to the Simpsons character Bart Simpson. Here's a dramatized animation inspired by this individual. The story I'm about to tell is by far the most terrifying thing that has ever happened to me. I was just a kid at the time, but as a young teenager I thought I was much more mature than I actually was. My parents were leaving for the weekend to go visit some relatives who lived about 4 or 5 hours down the road in a rural part of the state. They had an acre of land and a huge house, so that was usually the place where reunions were planned. My parents wanted me to come, but to me, the thought of being stuck for 3 days in the middle of nowhere with all of my cousins, none of whom I was able to get along with, sounded like torture. I begged to stay, but it took a lot of back and forth to convince my parents that I was mature enough to be left alone at the house. My parents eventually caved and let me stay. I clearly remember the sternness in my mother's voice when she told me not to answer the door for anybody, for any reason, no matter what. Despite the abundance of caution my mother tried to give me, for the first few hours everything seemed fine. It wasn't until my parents texted me around nightfall that they arrived at the relative's house that the reality of the situation set in. That's when it hit me that my parents were a full 4-hour car ride away from me, and the darkness of the house after sundown was a lot more eerie than it ever seemed. I felt like I was in a cave. Every sound I heard outside sent chills down my spine. Every creak of a floorboard, every rustling of the leaves. They all gave me the sensation that I wasn't actually alone, even though that seemed totally irrational. To cover up my paranoid, heightened sense of hearing, I turned on the TV and started watching my favorite show at the time, The Simpsons. My childhood cartoon gave me a sense of comfort and safety, until I heard several loud knocks coming from the front door. It was so loud I could feel the vibration through the floor. I froze and tried to pretend I didn't exist, hoping that whoever it was would just go away, but they wouldn't. The fear and panic within me simply continued to build as the relentless pounding at the door went on and on. Finally, I couldn't handle it anymore. I got to my feet and very slowly walked up to the door and cracked it open. Immediately, the person on the other side tried to barge straight in, but they were held back by the chain lock that I had left latched. When they realized they couldn't get in, they crammed their face in the space between the door and the frame. I couldn't recognize who the man was, but he was old and creepy. especially in the way that his glossy eyes fixated on me in the dark. Hey, little man, what's your name? Alex? What's yours? Would you let me in, Alex? I need to talk to your parents. Are they home? Why? Why do you need to talk to my parents? Oh, are they not here? You must be the man of the house then. It's okay, you can let me in. I'm your neighbor. I just need to borrow your lawnmower. It was in that moment that I finally realized that none of this was adding up, and that I'd made a mistake by even answering the door. I thought to myself, who mows their lawn in the middle of the night? I can't help you. Go ask someone else. I slammed the door shut and locked it up tight. He was no longer trying to beat down the door, so I thought I was in the clear. I went back to watching The Simpsons, and by about halfway through that episode, I was still on edge. I kept hearing the sound of tapping on the windows outside the living room, keeping me from getting too comfortable. No matter how hard I strained my eyes, I couldn't see anything on the other side of the glass. I told myself it was just the wind knocking a branch against the pane, but it didn't sit right with me. Hoping that a change of scenery would help calm me down before bed, I walked into the kitchen to get a late-night glass of cold milk. I kept the lights off and found my way through the darkness with the ambient light of the TV, as I didn't want the man from earlier to see the lights on in my house and think I was still awake. For a few moments, it was silent. But then the tapping returned as a loud banging on the glass right next to me. I jumped and spilled my glass of milk all over the kitchen tile. And then, I saw two hands press against the kitchen window. And there he was, the face of the same man from earlier smiling at me. I'd watched so much of The Simpsons that his face looked exactly like the face of Bart. Spiky hair and everything. Except he looked more grotesque and uncannier. He smushed his nose against the glass and stared right at me. Hey, you kinda look like Milhouse. You wanna hang out? Come on, it'd be fun. Just like on TV, The Adventures of Bart and Milhouse. All you gotta do is let me in. Leave me alone or I'm calling the cops! I ran out of the kitchen and sprinted to my bedroom and locked the door. I was so shaken up I could barely think straight. I crawled under my bed and hid there, thinking he wouldn't be able to find me. But it didn't take long. I first heard his footsteps outside my window, and then his tapping once again. But this time it sounded different. It had gone from the muffled ticking of fingernails to the sharp clang of something hard like metal. I never looked, but it must have been a knife. Psst. Alex, you still there? Let me in. I just want to play. Open the door, Alex! I ran out from under my bed to grab the phone from the kitchen and call my parents. Mom, there's a man outside the house and he won't leave me alone. Please come home. Unfortunately, there would have been no way for my parents to get home soon enough. My mom said she would call the cops and told me to hide until they arrived and to not make a sound. I listened to her every word and hung up the phone. I ran down the hallway and crawled under my bed. It was there that I waited for what felt like an eternity before the cops finally came. Of course, the creep was gone by then. There was no sign of him except for a crack on the kitchen window. I still don't want to think about what would have happened if he got in, especially after I saw him a few months later on the TV. Except it wasn't on The Simpsons, but To Catch a Predator.
Can we just get to what?
What was your plan here tonight?
I was just gonna drink and hang out and watch some DVDs, and that was it.
The next story was inspired by the mugshot of this criminal you see here. At first glance, most would automatically pinpoint the similarities in comparison to the character Sideshow Bob from The Simpsons. Either way, the animation you're about to see displays a dramatized version of what landed him behind bars, or should I say, what got him this notorious mugshot. After drinking too much, I stayed at my friend's house for the night and decided to return home the following morning to prep myself for work. When I got back to my apartment, my legs were still a bit wobbly from all the alcohol I had last night. Then, upon reaching the door, I brought out the keys, but noticed that it was slightly open. I gently opened the door and entered the unit, where all of my things were in disarray. The TV was smashed, the sofa overturned, vases shattered, and the contents of my fridge coated the wooden floor panels, making it look like abstract art. Moments later, I heard a noise coming from the bedroom, and it sounded like people rummaging through my stuff. Hence, I crept as quietly as I could, wishing dearly that my hunch was wrong. However, as I peeked through the tiny hole, I stiffened at the sight of two men gathering cash from a small safe in my closet. So, instinctively, the first thing that came to mind was getting out of the apartment. As I took a step back, ready to run for it, the floor suddenly creaked, and the two guys standing in the room were now facing me with eerie clown masks. For a brief moment, we just stared at each other, my feet unable to move. "What's wrong with me?" I asked myself. Then, I soon realized that fear was like an anchor that kept me in place. Moments later, the culprit said, "Run, you little sissy!" And suddenly, my feet were back in motion. In the tight spaces of my small apartment unit, I could hear the guys guffaw as they rushed to capture me, with one of them saying, "Don't let him get away!" I threw beer glasses and drenched the wooden panels with water, hoping they would get themselves injured and buy me some time to escape. But unfortunately, they were undeterred, quickly getting up. As I desperately tried to open the door, they cussed incessantly. So, locking myself in the bathroom was my best option. When I got in, I crouched next to the tub, where I quivered, fearing for my life. And unfortunately, my phone's battery had died, leaving me at a dead end. Later on, I heard a loud banging on the door, but since I hadn't seen their faces, I tried to convince them to go away by saying, "Look, I don't know who you guys are, but you can take the money and leave." However, to my horror, the banging didn't stop. In fact, it became much louder than before. Moments later, one of them successfully punctured a massive hole in the door with his head protruding. So, with his mask still on, he chortled and said,
"Here's Johnny!"
I could hear his partner still banging on the door until the only barrier I relied on unhinged itself and fell on the bathroom's tiled floor. Then, before I had any chance to defend myself, one of them grabbed my hair and hit my head on the porcelain tub, knocking me out cold. I didn't know how long I was unconscious for, but when I woke up, I had a blindfold over me, and the room smelled damp. As I lifted my head, one of them said,
"Hey, Bob, look! He's finally awake!"
Then, he removed the blindfold in a split second, my eyes squinting at the light. Both my hands and feet were bound with metal chains and 2 locks, so I knew it would be difficult to make my escape. Moreover, even if I wanted to scream, it would be a futile attempt, due to having a tape over my mouth. As I surveyed the area, I could tell that I was in a basement with a window or a door as my only way out of here. A man stepped in front of me, wearing a black t-shirt, denim pants, and leather shoes. However, what was most striking about him were his dreadlocks hairstyle and the sinister presence he exuded. Well, look who we have here," Bob said, while slapping my face fondly.
Please don't do this to me, please,"
I cried, begging for mercy. Then, Bob nodded to his accomplice, who pulled my head back and began waterboarding. No amount of words could describe the excruciating pain I was undergoing at the time. With a piece of cloth covering my face and breathing passages, a burning sensation spread across my immobilized body. "Okay, here's the deal," Bob spoke again. "Now, you took something from me, all right? And I don't like that very much. So if you could just tell me where it is."
"Wait a minute, you got the wrong guy. I didn't steal from anyone."
I was waterboarded again. Then Bob said,
"Don't play dumb with me, you prick. Do you think I would let you live after what you've done? But I'm not the one you want. I swear you have to believe me."
Both Bob and his accomplice looked at each other, seemingly puzzled. Next, they looked into my phone and wallet to confirm my identity. Then, to my surprise, Bob unlocked the chains and told me that I was free to go. Something was terribly off, especially after seeing his malicious grin, but I didn't care much for that. I ran out the door anyway, never looking back. Then, moments later, Bob and his accomplice were scurrying after me, laughing boisterously. frantically as I dashed into the woods.
What the hell?
I hollered as the two culprits advanced towards me. Then, unfortunately, they caught up to me and tied me to a tree upside down, picked up branches and started hitting me repeatedly until they broke. When they left to get themselves other branches from a nearby bush, I quickly untied my feet. Then, as I fell to the ground, I immediately stood up and ran, unheeding the pain of broken bones.
Hey, where'd he go?
The accomplice said.
Well, don't just stand there. Find him!
Bob replied furiously. I hid in the bushes until night fell, blood dripping from my head. Then, as I gingerly crouched, I could hear the sound of footsteps nearby, where Bob kept saying, "Here, kitty, 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 come on out. Daddy wants to play." Biting my nails, I wished they would just disappear. So after 7 agonizing hours, they finally quit and appeared to have left the area. But still anxious, I ran towards the riverbank. Then, seeing that the coast was clear, I called the cops. When they arrived, I explained everything that had happened and told them about Bob, who coincidentally looked like Sideshow Bob from the popular animated TV series The Simpsons. After getting my full statement at the station, they arrested Bob and his accomplice in a matter of 2 days. But since then, I decided to transfer to a nicer and smaller town, hoping I would not have to encounter another Sideshow Bob ever again.
I'm not a cop, I swear. I've just never done this before. I'm a little out of my element, you know. I was just hoping you could help me out. If I make this purchase, I might get laid. Alright, I believe you. You ain't no cop, but you's definitely an idiot.